Here we go. So we are back on the Business and Property Entrepreneur podcast. So we are in for a massive treat tonight. We were just talking about like what is a very integral part of becoming not a property investor, not these one-hit wonder people who think they can invest in property, but a real business and property entrepreneur. There is a difference. Business is about setting up systems. Being an entrepreneur is about solving problems, not just trying to make a quick buck. So we have been blessed tonight with Ryan and Giovanni here, and they're going to bring a very special subject to the table, which a lot of people dismiss or don't take too serious or don't set up their project well enough, and that is architecture. I mean, let's be honest, guys, even saying that word out loud, at least to me, because I'm into more of the business and the property entrepreneurship than like the planning and the minute details. Saying the word architecture is even sounds boring to me. So your job tonight is to bring the spice back to architecture and why this is so important. But before we get to that, let's just have a quick intro from each of you. Like, where did you come from? What led you? Like, what was your career path, or what happened to you guys growing up that led you to doing what you're doing today? Not just doing architecture, but also investing in property deals yourselves. Ryan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone, for having us on. I'm Ryan Windsor, co-director of Windsor Patania and HMO Architects. I started property fairly young, so I got into property at 17. And I've got to say, it was mainly because I don't come from an affluent background, and I thought it would be a great way to set up a pension. So I thought it was actually a one and done situation, Mark. I thought one property, I'm done, and I can sort of, bank on that. But actually learning more about it and then sort of, growing up, I realized, you need a few properties, especially if they're buy-to-lets, which I started with. And, just sort of continue to add to the portfolio every year. And, I don't know, Gio can tell us our inception story of how we met, maybe. Yeah.
I started investing in property a little bit later than Ryan, when I was 26, right? So now it's like 8 years ago, something like that. And but I am an architect, so I studied architecture in Italy. I'm from a city close to Florence called Siena, and I moved to the UK back in 2013. So then after 5 years of working by a quite big architectural practice called Foster & Partners, I decided to pursue the entrepreneurial path. And I started looking into property because I was fascinated about the financial freedom which property can give you if done properly, right? And this is how I met Ryan. So we met each other at an award ceremony where he was getting an award for his achievements in property investing. So I liked his, being humble and knowledgeable at the same time.
Oh, we lost him. Yeah. Okay. But it was getting exciting.
Yeah. He mentions about me being humble. I mean, I was pretty nervous being on the stage. Yeah, it's not every day you're in a room full of 400 people, who are doing bigger and better things than you. And I just remember him coming up to me and asking me loads of questions about, very, very basic things about buy-to-lets and mortgages. And then, I found out about him and what he was doing and the projects he was working on. And he was leading the design and development of, £100 million Apple stores. And he didn't really tell me about that, and I was like, what the hell are you asking me about, 6-meter extensions or something, with his backgrounds. So he was definitely humble as well.
Yeah. And he's back joining us now. Yeah, so like just talking about networks, sometimes people find it very difficult. I think especially as time has gone on, loads of things are popping up all over the place now of, join this and get this secret sauce and all of this stuff. Like sometimes it can be difficult. I hear so many stories about, back in the day where like there was this network and there was this property meetup and everything was very authentic and, people used to work together. And I think over time, people have lost that. I hear lots of stories about like, people just, talking about it, but not doing it themselves and so on. So what was your experience as you guys were coming through, like Ryan, you've been blessed to be doing it since you're 17. at 17, I was working on a building site. That's the closest I got to, investing into property, just doing the work for the people. I mean, I always tell this story, like I was literally working on a HMO in Leicester on Foss Road South. Yeah, when I didn't even know what a HMO was. I was just doing what I was told, and then later I was like, that's why there was a kitchen on every floor. That's why there was at the time I thought this is a bit strange, but hey ho, like just do it. So when it comes to the networking aspect and how do you get to know these experienced people and actually trust what people are saying, what's been your experience? Is it all good? Is it all bad? Is there a mixture?
I think it's definitely a mixture, right? I mean, there's some people out there that really care. They want to give you the real advice, and I'd like to think me and Giovanni are those people. We want to share real world experiences. We'd rather tell a client, that it doesn't work than pretend it does just to get, a fee. But as you're probably well aware, Mark, there's people out there that's, a little bit more unscrupulous than that, right? So you just got to keep an eye out, really. But luckily, me and Giovanni have been able to connect with some really, really good people who've got their own sort of networks and, doing some good stuff, telling the truth.
Yeah, and I think social media has distorted a lot of that because, it all became about, clever marketing, hook lines, grabbing people's attention and so on. How do you guys separate yourself from, all of that Instagram, garbage to actually like, here's the real deal. So like you can choose the clients that you want to work with?
I mean, in general, we've been quite busy doing the work rather than, focusing on social media. So now we have a team, so we have more time available to be on social media. And I guess the way we differentiate ourselves is via providing experience from the real world, right? From the architectural point of view, which actually is a really interesting part of the life of a real estate developer, right? Because the architecture bit touches a lot of points in the development. The architect sees everyone involved in the project and also has an understanding of the numbers behind the project. So we can kind of see everything which is happening, the bad things, the good things, right? And we see where the developers make the toughest mistakes down the line.
Yeah, and I think obviously you guys have got a massive array of experience, which we're going to touch on shortly, but like I think one of the biggest challenges people find is like, when do I bring an architect in? Like, when is the best time to do it so I don't waste their time, so I don't end up spending money or paying for something that I'm actually not going to need? So like, what would you say, or what advice do you have for people as like, when is the good time to start engaging with an architect so we don't waste too much time, but at the same time we do set the project up to succeed?
I think Ryan has like 50 of these calls every week.
Yeah, I was going to say the time, definitely the time not to do it, right, is when you are starting the building work, right? Like, don't start building work and then say, oh, actually, I might need an architect. And you're laughing, but we actually got asked to help out on a fairly big flat development in London. And it was being led by, I think, a QS, a project manager, and a general builder. And they were halfway through the build, over time, over budget. Everyone's freaking out. And they said, Ryan, can you actually come in and help?
Was there no plans?
There was like a outline plan, like a box, right? Like no architectural drawings. And if you want the technicalities of it, you can ask Giovanni, because he was kind of more involved in the project. But they didn't have building reg drawings, and you're sort of like, well, how are you even on site? How are you even doing this? So sometimes that happens more often than not. So I mean, the best time.
Crazy. Well, like if you was to dig, like, or sometimes when you get into that type of situation, but what are the reasons that it wasn't set up? Was it just purely just to save money, or?
I don't. Did you find out in the end? I think it was just the builder who wanted to start the work before waiting 6 months to get planning approvals and things like that.
There is, of course, the rush to go on site. You know, some people, they have bridging finance. They want to finish everything as fast as possible, but they do a lot of mistakes down the line. And then obviously there is the save money side of things. You know, people don't want to. They think they can do everything themselves, right? And then they end up paying like 3 to 4 times what they had to pay in the first place, right? So it's a false economy, right?
Yeah.
Generally, like the clients that have the smoothest ride, they'll contact us. I'm thinking about buying a property, Ryan. Can I have a 15-minute chat? Have a 15-minute chat with me, and then, you know, okay, are you going to put your offer in? Yes, I think I'm going to put my offer in. Put their offer in. They've secured it somewhat. You know, they've got some time they can look into it now, and then we do some variation of a feasibility study, some sketch designs, look at the planning, look at the building regs, look at the licensing requirements, and then give a project like, you know, the green light, or you know, tell them actually no, don't do it. So yeah, feasibility study, that would probably be the best time to always get an architect involved. If we say that the project's a go, we're going to put our name on it, we're going to put it in a report. You can't get better than that.
Absolutely. And this is why we have this saying, you know, in our community, it's like, you know, people, they say, oh, I want to be around like-minded people. Now, we actually discovered, and we have a principle that says that that's actually a trap, you know, like-minded. We actually want to be around trained people, you know, because when people are like-minded, if it's all good, it's all good. But when it's all bad, it's all bad.
Yeah.
But when you're around trained people, you know, and people have got their specialisms, or, you know, we're all working off the same kind of frameworks, but with different expertise, then obviously a trained person can, you know, pull someone out of a hole if they're starting to go down one. Yeah. And that's why, and by the way, anybody listening or watching here, if you want to be part of a free community with the power team and the training and the coaching, the mentoring and sessions like this, but behind closed doors, just put the word #free right now, and we will send you the details to go in there. And, you know, that's where you get access to specialists like this, you know, Ryan and Giovanni, because I want to provide, you know, free stuff, guys. You know, like, I don't think people should pay. I seen this post today, you know, should I pay 15K for someone's training? And everyone was like, no, you don't need it, and so on. And I was like, look, I get it. There's a lot of trash out there, not intentionally, just sometimes people jumped on the bandwagon of wanting to create, you know, training. But at the same time, like you just said, if you're going to do everything by yourself, you're gonna pay anyway. Yeah. So that's why we want to set it up for free, you know, so at least people can save some money, because our end game is to create, you know, businesses that actually work with each other. So let's say if we get the timing right, you know, like we're all trained now, we're working with trained people, we're in the right environment, and we engage at the right time. What are the major things that people are going to look out for or consider? And let's just stay at the kind of the lower end of the market, you know, HMOs, 6, 7, 10 bed HMOs, maybe a flip, maybe we're doing an extension. What are the things that they really need to strongly, you know, consider or definitely cover again before they start bowling on with the project?
So a few things. I mean, if we look at the HMOs, for example, right, a lot of developers which are starting out, they love working on spreadsheets, right? The beauty of those, you know, rows and columns and those numbers which are, you know, showing you your profit and stuff like that. And sometimes they detach yourself from the reality, because you might have, you know, 10 bedrooms or 12 bedrooms, and in real life you might only be able to fit 8 bedrooms, right? Because of planning, because of the constraints of the size of the bedrooms, the living rooms, right? So that is why when you find the property on Rightmove, on Zoopla, the first thing you should do, apart from running your numbers, the second thing you should do is actually look for whether you can actually fit that amount of bedrooms under a planning point of view, under a licensing point of view, etc., right? So a feasibility study, a design appraisal of your property is essential to make sure you're buying the right property. So
one thing just to jump in here is a lot of people, you know, tend to focus on like planning or the room size requirements. If we're talking about HMOs, flats are another consideration, but they might forget about building control and all of the different parts, A, B, C, D, E, you know. So as I talk to a lot of clients, I say, as you make planning happy, you can actually make building control unhappy, and vice versa. You make building control happy, you insulate the room, acoustic insulation, fire protection, they're going to be super happy with you. Unfortunately, you're outside of the size requirements for the room, or you know, you've changed the layout of the property, they're not so happy. So obviously it's all got to work. It's a balancing act.
Yeah, here's good. Like, let's take one piece from each of you, you know, because we're getting tapping into your experience here of what people should look out for. But let's say if someone needs to recruit an architect, yeah, for one of their projects, how should they be interviewing, yeah, the architect? Like, what should they be asking? You know, how can someone ask questions to be like, yeah, I know for sure these guys can do my job, or what's a red flag? What would your best advice be around that?
Ask for case studies. Ask, you know, to show you which are the projects they worked, you know, in the past. So, you know, let them explain the whole journey they followed from planning to building control and licensing, right? That is fundamental. So if they've done it once, you know, well, or more than once, they will do it again, you know, they will do it again, a good job for you, right? Red flags, Ryan, for you? Maybe I know a red flag. Maybe is the one you're about to say. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll see if we're synced up. Yeah. I was going to say, architect is a protected profession, Mark. Right. So there's a lot of people out there who are designers, who are stagers, interior designers, that kind of stuff, and they'll try and take on extra work and say, yeah, of course I can do it, because they can use the software, the CAD software. So if you really want an architect who is all about finding solutions to your project, yeah, you should actually check if they're registered with the ARB, Architect Registration Board. And if you want someone who has and who understands all of the regulations, the British regulations, then, you know, a RIBA chartered practice. Yeah, so Royal Institute of British Architects. Do you need a RIBA chartered practice? No, but definitely if you want to work with an architect and not a CAD technician, like, you can be a CAD technician, Mark, tomorrow. You just have to learn the software. And, you know, but have you actually been trained for 7 years on finding solutions to problems, you know? And foreseeing them is actually probably a more important aspect. I'd say that's something someone should really check for. Gio, was that what you were thinking I was going to say?
That was one of the most important ones. You know, people which are saying they are architects but they are not, and of course there is price, right? So when an architect gives you a price for his services which is extremely low, right? I would be really, really careful, because it means that they're either going to take longer to deliver your project, or they might not be responsive, or they might not have the knowledge, and they are just, you know, they're using your project as a learning curve, right? So just be careful with that.
Yeah. I mean, I joked to Gio a couple of years ago that we should change the name of our company to SOS Architecture, Mark, because we had so many clients that just found us online, or a recommendation, which is always nicer. And, you know, they had worked with 1, 2, or even 3 architects. We've got case studies on our website where we've got clients where they've hired up to 3 architects and they've failed 1 year, 2 years of work to get planning permission. We have come in, and as I say we're a team, so our team have come in, and within 6 months we have solved a massive problem. So there's one project on the website where the client's dad owned a GP surgery in London. He was paying business rates for, was it 3 years, Gio? £2,000 a month or something? It was a lot of money, right? He was paying $2,000 a month or something like that. And they just couldn't find the solution to the problem. We came in and we found the solution. We turned it into flats. We got permission. And I mean, when we told him we got planning permission for it, I mean, there was tears of joy. And that's obviously really special for us, right? Because not only have we done a good investment, but we've solved this big elephant on this client's back and got it off of his back. Yeah.
So maybe you can solve this. This was a couple of years ago now. I'm wondering if you can solve a little debate that we were having. So this was when I was running my construction company, and one of the people we were doing a job for, they didn't go with our advice on how to recruit an architect. And the people that we used in our team. So they selected their own, and they got some plans. And then when they needed some adjustments to those plans, they wanted to charge them a few £1,000s, which they weren't happy with. So then they took those plans to someone else. And anyway, this person was supposed to have done the plans, but then they didn't hit the deadline. I'm just wondering, in your industry, is it okay? Is it like a feasible excuse to not hit a deadline if your computer breaks?
Your computer breaks. I mean, it depends exactly what the definition of computer breaking, because you might have, temporary breakdown, right? But if it just freezes and completely unusable, then usually, I mean, the way we work, right? For example, and many other architects work, right?
Systems. Yeah, you like systems.
Maybe I understand what happened, right? The guy had everything saved on his computer. The computer just break down, and now he lost all the files, right? Because everything was saved on his computer, on his laptop,
probably
right?
Personal computer. Yeah.
I think we use these settings only for the first month we've been operating, but afterwards we moved all our database online, right? So we're using the cloud. So if today my laptop crashes or explodes, right, I still can buy another laptop and quickly access my data and can carry on. So if you are a big company, I mean, if you are a professional studio and you are dealing with professional developers, the developer, which is your client, will expect that you have the backup methods and systems to avoid these things, this thing in the first place, right? I don't think it's an excuse. I don't think is an excuse. It would be interesting. For how long was the delay caused? How much was the delay caused by this?
It's hard to isolate that, because it was in amongst other delays of like wanting to change it, wanting to be charged thousands of pounds. Then this guy's computer broke. Then someone else's parent at the football said he could do it, and then they superimposed one plan on top of another, and we could see the lines, and we was like, this is becoming Mickey Mouse here, and this is what happens when you don't select, or like you're trying to save a few. I don't know what you're trying to save, because like either way you pay, like you pay to get it done properly, or you're going to pay because there's some kind of reduction in quality or whatever.
Can I jump in on that a little bit? So I mean, some pushback we get, and some other people in the profession at this level doing these type of projects get when we've just passed building control and we now want to start speaking with builders. And our suggestion always is to get, especially like when you're doing extensions and you're going to spend maybe 150, 200,000 to upgrade the drawings from building reg drawings to construction, and then put a schedule of works together, which is a lovely Excel sheet of everything that needs to be done on the site. So you can really cost it, tendering pack, and then you go to the builder. Get some pushback on that sometimes, but then the builder has a lot of what I call creative liberties, Mark, where they can choose where to put things, or even the specifications of the material. So you specify a boiler, but then what is it? A Valent, 28 kilowatt, 30 kilowatt, backseat.
Interpretation is a killer. Like this is some massive mistakes I made at the beginning. I used to just when in my investment, career, that is, I remember I used to take 3 builders around, try and get 3 prices, and I'm like, why is this guy 50k more than the other one? And it's because they're basically pricing off a conversation. But like, fortunately, I had a problem, then I fix it. I have another problem, then I fix it, and that's why we create this free community that is there to help people stop doing that. So remember, if you're listening to this, put #free if you want access to that free community where all this free training, guidance, where you can ask questions and basically not make the mistakes to do it. Some people ask me, why would you do it for free? Why would you introduce us to industry experts, amazing people, and so on? I mean, number one, I just like to see people win. But number two is our end game is to build a real life resorts and have awesome people a part of that. And it's like the amount of mistakes I've made from working with cowboys or acting like a cowboy. I'll put my hands up. I've done it myself. I acted like a cowboy myself. So like I made those mistakes. So I don't want other people. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have anyone saying, well, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, go here, go there. I was surrounded by only tradespeople or people I grew up on a council estate with, which we're all acting like cowboys because that was our environment. So now obviously want to be part of an environment where people are trained and we get, because we now have at least I say this to myself, cheap today don't mean cheap tomorrow, and I had to replace a flat roof on one of my properties. It's only 5 or 6 years old. I shouldn't have to be doing that.
Yeah,
like one of those proper, fiberglass. I should probably, smeared it so thin that it just wore away,
I learnt my lessons with bathrooms. I went a bit cheap, first of all, just tiling around the sink, and now, it's mechanical vents and, tile the whole bathroom. And I just don't want any problems for 10 or 15 years, I mean, yes, we'll replace the bathroom in 20 years, if it gets really tired, but it shouldn't do now, it's so user friendly.
You just reminded me, and this is a difference between the person who is a developer or a business, an entrepreneur, versus a tradesperson or someone who just is a knockoff property investor. Is I remember when we were installing wet rooms in these houses, and like the contract, I was only a kid just helping out on the site, but they were saying, why would you do that? You can do it much cheaper for this. Why did they spend all this money doing this and that and blah blah blah? But obviously now down the line I know, but this stuff lasts. Like this ain't like breaking, these weak little shower trays that, people start jumping on and break and then cause a leak. And now not just there needs replacing, downstairs now the floor's a mess. And, I just had one of my other ones where like there was a leak, and the floor was, it couldn't get away. It was one of those click floors with the underlay underneath. So one mistake leads to another problem, because it's all cheap. It was all cheaply put together.
Save $3,000, but then it's going to cost you 10 grand to fix, and then you have to reinstall, and then a couple of years later, if you don't do it again, the standard. So I mean, maybe we suggest to spend a little bit more, but it's coming from a place of experience, right? So you can just sit back, relax, and have less problems.
Yeah. And look, we're now going to be going into our private community in the Real Life Tribe. So anybody who's been listening, thank you very much. If you're part of the tribe, we'll see you in there. If you have any other questions, do let us know on here, and we'll make sure we answer them in the follow-up over the coming days or week or so. But thank you so much for coming on here. I know we only touched on a few different subjects here, and there's so much more to talk about, which is what we're going to do in our private community. But what kind of sign-off advice would you have for people in terms of what the importance of bringing the architects in at the right time? What would your final piece of advice be, each of you?
Ryan. I need to think about.
I mean, it's like anything in life, right? If you plan properly, the execution it goes smooth.
Love it.
For me, is the due diligence, right? Buy in the right place. So if you're doing HMOs, for example, and you want to buy in an Article 4 area, just make sure that the Article 4 area doesn't have additional policies against HMOs, because you might buy a property which you will never be able to convert into an HMO. So just in general, make sure you are aware of the local planning policy before buying a property in a specific area.
Very good. And that advice goes so much deeper from the both of you. So anybody listening, make sure you get into the free community and get your hands on more of this type of information, because in property, it's all about if you create the right product in the right area, which is based on the demand, then there's longevity in it. If not, there's a house near me up for £1 million. It's been up for over a year, and I'm just thinking, why have you put £1 million house in where people with £1 million are not going to want to, they're not going to want to live on the main road next to a set of traffic lights. Crazy stuff, right? But even stuff like that seems very straightforward, people oversee. But thank you so much for coming on. Looking forward to getting into our community. We're going to carry this conversation on and go much deeper. So I really appreciate you guys coming in, adding value, and please do put in the comments after how people can reach out to you as well. But thank you everyone for listening. This has been the Business Property Entrepreneur Podcast. Until next time, do the right thing for the right reason, because it's the only way you discover true potential.